Hello and welcome. I'm Meenu Shekhar and you're watching Vaahini Virtual Connect. We are here to discuss an issue that many of us are grappling with, working from home during the times of the corona crisis. Now, these are highly unusual times. So on the one hand, we have our full-time work responsibilities, and on the other hand, we have limited domestic support. Now, what the lockdown has meant is that in many of our homes, our domestic helpers, our cleaners, our cooks, our nannies, caregivers, drivers, gardeners, etc., are able to come to work. Now, while in some homes, no doubt, men are contributing equally to the housework, in some homes, the men may be chipping in to a certain extent, the reality is that in most of our homes, the majority of the responsibility of running the household really falls on women. Now, given this reality, is there a danger that women may actually lose out on the workplace? Can they get sidelined, for instance, at this point in time, or will they lose out on important roles and responsibilities on the work front? So how does one address this challenge? How does one create an environment in which everyone, irrespective of their gender, is able to balance their professional and personal responsibilities? And more importantly, can we use this crisis as an opportunity to bring about a fundamental change, a paradigm shift in our traditional approach to gender roles and responsibilities? I have with me Kalpana Tatavarti. Kalpana is the founder of Bangalore-based inclusion and diversity firm Parity Consulting. Kalpana, thank you very much for joining us here today. Looking forward to your views, Kalpana.
Thank you so much, Meenu, for inviting me for this very important and critical conversation that we need to have. And I'm going to assume that our conversation is going to be today about working women in the organized workforce who have access to work from home, which itself is a big thing. And the majority of women that we are going to be talking about is women in this organized workforce in the junior and middle management. The first challenge, as you yourself rightly pointed out, is really the demands that arise out of the complexity of what I call working from home and working for home, which was always the case. But now, because of COVID, the sheer amount of housework has tripled. Schools have shut down, daycare centers have shut down. Domestic help, as you yourself pointed out, is either very limited or unavailable. And therefore, the paid work that this support system was providing for childcare and domestic chores is now completely on the professional working woman who's, working from home for her career and working for home as well. This is further complicated by the fact that most working couples in our country have their parents living with them, which means additional care, which also falls on the woman's shoulders, which is falling. Add to that the precautions that we need to take due to COVID, managing groceries are sanitized, veggies are cleaned. All of this has placed the burden of childcare as well as housework on the women in the family. Sure, there is definitely an improvement in terms of the sharing of household work, but it's still helping or supporting while the women are bearing the mental load of the responsibility of this work. Planning. Is there enough rice? Are there enough groceries? Are they engaged? Are they doing their homework? You get the drift. The second challenge is, in most cases, women tend to be the shock absorbers or the stress absorbers in a family, which places an additional load on their emotional and mental well-being. Given that they have very, very little time between their professional and their home responsibilities, they're not getting enough me time and stress levels are shooting up. Now, my big concern is these two challenges are throwing up a further stronger and a more serious challenge, which is really reiteration of gender roles and biases. Since traditionally women's careers are seen as secondary by both themselves and their families, unless this load is managed well, women's careers might take a back seat. There is just too much work to do, whose career is more important, whose is less important, and therefore take a back seat in your career. So that will reiterate the gender roles of men as breadwinners and women as caregivers. And this feeds into the biases, the stereotypes that we have of women in workplaces. I was talking to a manager who has a team which has both men and women in his team. And he was saying, Kalpana, nowadays women are just not interested in their work. Unless we are very consciously pushing back these stereotypes, I'm worried that, the gender parity agenda might take a backseat. Over to you, Meenu.
Great points, Kalpana. Now, given that this is the reality of our lives today, what would your advice be to women on how can they successfully balance the two responsibilities? So they have the full-time work responsibilities, they have the full-time home responsibilities, and the added pressure because of the lockdown situation. And how do they ensure that they don't lose out on the work front?
I've always maintained that for women, it is not work-life balance, it is work-work balance. And it's unfair to place the additional responsibility of asking them to balance both on them. I think families, managers, employers, all of us have a big role to play. Having said that, women can aid that process by focusing on what I call the 3 R's, redefine the template, renegotiate rules, and raise your hand for more. What do I mean by redefine the template? Redefine for yourself what it means to be a good wife, a good daughter or daughter-in-law, rather than nodding your head to what society or others have crafted as the responsibilities. So you redefine for yourself the template of what is a good mother. And this has to be done in conjunction with your, obviously, spouse and the rest of the family. So for me, being a good mother is about ensuring the emotional health of my children, ensuring the house is clean, does not fall under my template. So you clarify to yourself, this is your choice, exercise choice there. Once you do that, you renegotiate the gender roles, as in, this is not something that falls in my responsibility. I think everybody needs to pitch in, whoever has agreed. And I think the COVID-19 has given a big opportunity for women to really shine a bright light on the amount of work that goes into running a family. Before this, when are there at home now watching it, it is a reality. This reality was just the world of words that I was saying earlier. But now they are there physically. So shine a light on it. The other day, my husband was asking me, why are there so many clothes? Why are there so many vessels? Why are we cooking so much food? And I'm like, this is reality. This is the work that is going into our house every day. This is regular work. So I would urge women to leverage this opportunity really to renegotiate gender roles. And the third is raising your hand for key responsibilities. Now your time is freed for doing all of this. Communicate your ambition, communicate your intent to sustain in the workforce, and then ask for what you need to perform. Bringing your whole life, whole self to work means you have a right to articulate your needs. Obviously, after ensuring that you are responsible enough to perform. Finally, I would urge them to be ruthless about me time. Yesterday, when I was getting ready to do my yoga class, in the evening, my daughter came up to me and said, let's all sit down together and have a chat. I was very tempted, but I stuck to my yoga. Because that is one time that I get to be alone, which centers me, which gives me the strength and the energy to work with other things. So we deserve to nurture our mental and our emotional well-being. I think so. The 3 R's and me time, very, very important. Meenu, over to you.
Kalpana, given all these challenges that we've spoken about and how women from their part can address it, you also mentioned that it is not the responsibility of women alone. So what would you say that organizations can do to make it easier for everyone, and particularly women, to successfully balance their multiple roles and also ensure that they don't lose out on the work front?
So from an organizational perspective, I think it's important to understand that the pandemic impacts different demographic groups differently. For women, the challenges are increased workload. It's important to accept and realize that many women may not have the choice to push back or reject. I might be a very empowered woman, but the current reality of social structures is that if my domestic staff doesn't come, I need to ensure that there's food on the table. So as we're fighting and pushing to make those changes, it's also important to cater to the current reality. Because the choices I make about gender roles is limited in the canvas of social structures. So organizations have to understand, get to know the context of their women employees by a survey or whatever. In fact, one organization we know has put a separate team together, special team for this. Understand the context of women employees best done at a team level and accommodate around their particular boundaries. Second thing I think is to sensitize and share this information with managers on the ground, because they have to really manage this workload, so to speak. So sensitize managers on the demands that women are facing during this crisis, and enable them to work around those demands. For example, can all calls, meetings be fixed at a particular time that works around the typical household chores? Third thing is kind of really expanding on point number 2, which is managers can also see how they can give flexibility, give the directions, give the tasks, give the guidelines, but leave it to the women on when they'll finish it. If a task has to be finished in, say, 4 days, whether they do it during 2 to 3 in the afternoon or 2 to 3 in the night is best left to them, rather than micromanage. Give that flexibility. I think these 3 will go a long way, and I'm sure Deepashri will have a lot more to add here.
Kalpana, thanks so much. I think you made some wonderful points and great takeaways for our viewers. Any final thoughts that you would like to share with them?
So I think COVID-19 has placed challenges on all of us. And we all have to appreciate that it impacts different demographic groups differently. Both organizations and women can ensure that we do not lose out on the baby steps we have taken to achieve gender parity in the last few years. If we can all come together and handle this sensitively and thoughtfully. From an organizational perspective, if we can practice true inclusion, and when I say true inclusion, what do I mean? I mean that we need to understand that different demographic groups have different life experiences. That means for them to perform optimally, the needs of those differential experiences have to be met. If we can do that, that is true inclusion. And as organizations try to accommodate those differential needs, which are emerging out of societal structures, individually, if women can also do their bit by, practicing the 3 R's of redefining the template of gender for themselves, renegotiating gender roles, and, raising their hand for key opportunities, I think we will stay through this, hopefully, much more stronger and not having lost out on the gender parity agenda.
Thank you, Kalpana. It's been wonderful having you with us, and thank you so much for sharing your views and your insights on these very, very complex issues. Let's now talk to Deepashri Basu, Head of Talent Strategy and Inclusion and Diversity Lead at Accenture India. Deepa, thank you for joining us and for sharing your insights on this topic. Deepa, from your perspective, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that women are going through in the current work from home scenario?
Well, the COVID-19 pandemic has really disrupted the way we live and work at an unprecedented scale, right? Today, most people are working under new conditions. They're experiencing all kinds of pressures. For many of us, this is really the first time that we are working from home. And even for people who've been used to working from home and who've done this in the past, it's really never really been at for such an extended period of time. So this is really a new reality for all of us. So one of the things that I feel that we need to very consciously do is to set boundaries, just so that we are able to manage, whatever's needed of us, manage our deliverables at work, manage what we need to do at home. What happens is when you work from home, it is very easy to go on and on for long periods of time without taking a break, and sometimes work can stretch late into the evenings, beyond what you would probably do if you were working from an office. Because at a point you would leave your office and then drive back home. Probably that doesn't happen. So you could probably just go on and on. So it's very important to be conscious of these things.
So what would you say, Deepa, how should women really effectively balance the two responsibilities? One would say multiple responsibilities on multiple fronts.
When you are at home and you're working, it's important to let people around you know that you're working so that you're able to focus on your work deliverables. So I feel it's really, really important to really mark out times during the day when you're at work and you can do nothing else. Similarly, when you are at work, mark out timings on your calendar when you need to do things at home. For example, you may need to take out time to cook and have lunch with your family. So, mark that out. So, typically, a lot of people have tried to do, for example, 12:30 to 2 or 12:30 to 1:30, however, whatever, you just mark that out on your calendar just so that, no meeting can crop up at that time. Or if you need time to spend time with your children on there to help them with their schoolwork, or for those of us who stay with elderly parents, for example, just mark out a little bit of time in the evening to have an evening cup of tea with them. So it's important to set deliberate boundaries, and it's important to be very disciplined about them so that we can really balance all that is needed of us at this time. I also feel it's very important for us to be disciplined about self-care. And, when we are busy juggling so many roles, it's really easy to overlook ourselves, our own physical and mental well-being. Kalpana talked about this as well. Mark out time for yourself, whatever is important for your well-being every day. It could be exercise or meditation. It is just really, really important to take some time out for yourself every day.
From an organization perspective, what would you say are the opportunities and the challenges that the COVID situation, the COVID work from home situation has thrown up for them? And how can organizations come forward in making this a more enriching experience for everyone?
Yes, this is an unprecedented time for organizations as well. At Accenture, we researched what people look for from their organizations in today's context and learned that now, when several usual freedoms are restricted, people fundamentally need to feel that they are empowered to do what is necessary to keep themselves and their families safe and well. They also need flexibility to work differently. In today's times, people need to be engaged differently because we are now working in a completely virtual setup. People need to feel connected to the organization, connected to their leaders, connected to their teams. For a lot of supervisors as well, this is the first time that they are managing teams in a completely virtual environment. So expectations from them are different as well. We need to be able to build and sustain a culture of trust in this remote working environment. People need consistent, transparent, and clear communication from leadership at all levels. So now more than ever, there's actually a need to focus on values, culture, desired behaviors, and conduct. Organizations also need to focus on help people constantly get reskilled and upskilled so that they can get staffed onto new opportunities as they emerge. And finally, people need purpose. They need to know that the organization they're working with has a larger purpose, one they can relate to and connect with, so that communicating purpose now is more important than ever before.
And looking beyond this crisis, Deepa, do we make this a springboard to really bring about some paradigm shifts, some paradigm changes in the way all of us, whether it's men, women, organizations, society, all of us have been approaching these gender roles and gender responsibilities. Can we use this as an opportunity to bring about a fundamental shift?
Well, I talked of boundaries earlier, and I feel it's critical for organizations and leaders to encourage their people to set boundaries, to manage their responsibilities at work and home, and help them stay connected. At Accenture, we've developed a comprehensive range of tools and new programs to guide, support, and help our people to keep them informed and connected. We call this the More Together Now campaign. And our More Together Now program provides helpful advice, tips, and guidance to help our people adapt and thrive as they juggle work time and personal time in new ways, right? We also heard a lot from our people, especially women, on how they need support with childcare, how they need support to engage young children who are stuck at home now. And to help with that, we've introduced a new virtual summer camp under our existing Parents at Work program. The camp provides parents with online and offline resources to keep children between the ages 5 and 12 constructively engaged. It includes virtual hobby classes for children of similar groups. There's a resource center on our Vaahini app with a number of do-it-yourself tutorials and logic-based learning activities. There are treasure hunts, puzzles, etc. So our people have loved this so far.
Deepa, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a pleasure having you here, and your views have been most insightful. Thank you, Deepa. Thank you, Kalpana, for being with us on this show. And thank you, viewers, for joining us. We hope you found this useful and informative, and we hope you have some really key takeaways from this discussion that we've had. It's been a pleasure being here, and we hope to see you again. Thank you, everyone.